Hello, everybody. Hope everyone is doing well. It's November, right? It was November last week. It's November this week as well. November, and you could already feel Thanksgiving coming, right? I feel like once Thanksgiving comes, then it's the holidays and it's over. Anyway, hope everybody's doing well. I am going to just connect with everyone. We are starting a different unit today. Your papers aren't due until Wednesday, I think, right? I said of this week. So first, I'll just make sure that we're clear. If anybody has any questions, Greg is
Professor,
commuting.
did you get my email? I'm sorry.
Well, I got one of you, and I responded to one.
Okay. Regarding my health and well-being.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I haven't checked, but I will.
Okay. Yeah, I was just my response was just wishing you the best and hoping that. And I think I sent you a note just checking in to see how you're feeling. Anyway, good to see you here. Good to see everyone. So today we're going to begin kind of like a different section. We've been really diving into literature and in exploring poetry, and then we explored a series of short stories. And so now we're gonna and we you're gonna write another essay on them. We've written some writing exercises and all that stuff. But now we're gonna do move into a different unit, like a different skills, right? For that we do in this class. And so one of the things that we do is a research paper, that a research project, but a research paper. And I keep saying research project, research paper, because research projects are can include a paper, can include lots of different things. But we do a little bit of a hybrid in here. I think for me, it's is research is one piece of it. The other important part of it is really understanding how to begin constructing and creating an academic paper. And many of you have written research papers. Many of you have done it. If you're taking psychology or any of the criminal justice classes, you will be writing a research paper. And I know psychology, the first psychology class, you write one in it. And I always recommend that this class should be a prerequisite or co-requisite of that class, because we do some nuts and bolts things in this class that address that. So yeah, so we're gonna pop into that now. Um, but just to be clear, I think a lot of I'm just gonna review the the fiction assignment, right? I just want to share my screen a moment so we can all see two things that are important with it. I'm going into our class here, course content, right? More discussions is where you list the assignments, and then um, here, this one here, I'll move it to the top. So it's due this Wednesday. I'll move this to the top. So it's due Wednesday. It's a fiction paper. Here's the options, right? One that you can pick a story or stories and on your own and write and discuss any of the literary elements that we've been discussing this semester: symbolism, setting, metaphor, similes, dramatic structure, character analysis, any of those things with any of the stories. Or the second option, I give you like prompts, right? So you can, if you don't want to think about it, it's all set up, right? Discuss the symbolism of the arm in the short story Forgiveness by Rebecca Brown. And you'll write a paper on that. Or discuss at least three themes in the story: The Judge's Wife by Isabel Allende, or execute a character analysis of the three principal characters in the short story Cathedral by Raymond Carver, or then there's a fourth, fifth, and a sixth suggestion, and you can pick one of those. So, and then once you've written your paper according to the MLA formatting, you go into the course content, and there's an app here, Fiction, and you will view and complete, and then you'll find you submit it in this platform called Turnitin. You find your name on here, click it, or if you don't find your name automatically, you can type it in, put the title of it, fiction essay, and upload it onto the site. and that's what you got to do. Okay, so I just wanted to review it. I think most, I'm looking at the names, if not all of you were here last week, Wednesday, so it's just a quick review. Okay, so if there's any questions, let me know. If not, we can, I can pause now, or if not, we can ask questions after class. Any questions?
Yes, Professor, I have a question. I was
Amelia?
trying to start doing my essay, but I was like kind of lost to like how to start. So
Mhm.
my question is, are we doing this essay the same way we did the first essay? Like, we could choose the theme and then just write about the theme and then, or settings and stuff like that?
Yes, one option is for you to choose whatever you want. Usually I suggest begin with a story. So like, let's pretend you really liked everyday use, right? So if you like the everyday use, the Alice Walker story, you could start with that and say, okay, I really like that story. So what about that story do you want to write? Do you want to write about the characters? Do you want to write about the symbolism of the quilt? Do you want to write about, you know, the climax of the story? You know, when the mother takes the quilt away, like what's the significance of the climax? So you can pick what elements you want to write from a story if you like a story, right? If you like the Buddha principle story, you want to write a character analysis of the mother, of the women only, if you want a character analysis of the brothers and talk about their sibling rivalry, etc. You could do that as well. So one option is that media that you can pick a story and then write about the elements, right? For some students who might have a little bit more of a challenge trying to get a handle, I created like 6 options, and the options were built from your assignment. So some of you, if you did the assignment, then you in a way have begun creating the paper, right? So you have those options. Did that answer your question, Lydia?
Yes, Professor.
Okay, cool. Yeah, are there any other questions for the fiction essay? All right. If not, of course, you can always ask them in the chat. If not, then we're gonna begin our overview of the research paper. So just do people know how to raise your hand in the feature? Um, you don't have to do that. And under reactions, you could raise your hand or put a thumbs up. So just, I'm curious if folks, how many people have done a research paper before? Like show a hand, raise your hand or give a reaction, except for Gregory, who's commuting. Okay, so right now, of folks who are able to respond, I got about 4 people said they've done a research paper before. So that's good. That's not everyone, but that's a good showing. So some of you have experience with it. So in doing a research paper, what do you think is the operative word in the title research paper? Yes, thank you, Mabel. Research, right? So research is the searching for or discovering of information of something. Is an investigation, right? So sometimes in bigger and scientific research papers, there may be bigger things that you're looking for, things that you're looking to explore, things that you're looking to find out, things that you're looking to prove. And basically, it's the assumption is that your normal brain skill set needs more information to satisfy something, to explain something, to support something. And so you go in search of research, you go looking through documents to support your ideas or for information to support a position, right? The kind of paper that we will be writing is a literary research paper. That means that the information and things that we're going to be investigating are related to literature. And so that's what we've been working on this semester. So far, we've explored poetry and we've explored fiction. So in the fiction through short stories. For the research paper that we're going to do, you'll have a choice between 2 different types of paper. The information is on Blackboard. It's been up on Blackboard for a while. And one is focused on fiction and one is focused on poetry. But before we get to the actual assignments, I just want to speak and go over some of the specifics of the elements of the research paper. So very much like an essay, where the elements of an essay, right, where when you're writing an essay, you have an introduction, you have a body, and you have a conclusion, right? So a research paper has those very same things. So we can call this a research essay if we wanted to, but and or essays we can call them papers, right? But this is a research paper, but it's also a research essay, is the way to think about it. So it will have an introduction, it will have a body, and it will have a conclusion. So and the introduction will have a thesis statement. So we've done some work on thesis statements, and so the research paper will have that as well. The layout will be just like the MLA layout we've been doing for poetry and for fiction, that it will be with my name, I mean, your name, my name in the upper left-hand corner, the class and the date, right? It'll have a title, right? It'll have the page numbers on it as well. So all of that will be familiar territory. But there are certain things that the research paper will have that I haven't asked you to do up until this point, and that is MLA in text citation. And that means that a citation is you have to tell us where it's giving us the information of where it comes from. And so I'm doing this verbal overview. We're going to go through the handout together so that we have a second opportunity to talk about it. But MLA in text citation, some of you have done it. Some of you did it in your poetry essay. Some of you have done it in assignments. So that is when you use a quote. One quick example is when, let's say, you use a quote. Usually you have to say where that quote came from, right? So you can do either, like, you can give it credit in the text. You can say in the short story by Junot Diaz called Pura Principle, on page 8, the author says blah, 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 right? But that's a lot of words. So there's a way that you can incorporate that and give a citation, and that's you put in parentheses the name of the author and the page number. So that's just a very simplistic example of what MLA in text citation. So right now I'm talking, if I was in the classroom, I'd be putting things on a board and you'd be able to see it a little better, but we're gonna do the handout in a minute, so you'll be able to get some visuals behind it. So the one thing that will be different so far from an essay that you're written or are writing to this research paper is that it's gonna include MLA in text citation. That's going to be one of the instructions for the paper. The second thing that will be different from this paper, from any of the essays that you've written or will write, is that it's going to have a works cited page. And a works cited page is a separate page. A page after your essay is written, your conclusion is done. It doesn't matter if your conclusion is only a few lines on the page or goes all the way to the very end of the page or stops in the middle. Your works cited page is always a separate page. Starts with its own title, works cited, and then it lists any of the stories, any of the articles, anything that's included that you use to research your paper. You have a list of them, right? So we also say it's a bibliography, right? So it gives you a listing of all the texts, all the articles, books, whatever it is you use, movies, documentaries, podcasts, websites, because now we have more than books and articles from which to pull information. So all of that will be on a separate page, right, on the works cited page. So two big different things besides this paper including research. The two different things with this is that you're going to include MLA in text citation, and you're going to have a works cited page. So there'll be two elements that are being added to what you have been doing this far. So I'm going to share the screen. And let's take a look at the handout. And the handout is talking about some of the stuff I just mentioned. So I'm just trying to move this out of the way. Glad you have a better here. Okay, cool. So this is the overview handout that's a resource to you in constructing a research paper. The first thing, we have a list of suggested websites at the top, right? And these are websites, and I've labeled them. This is a research paper overview. It's a general one from English Purdue OWL. There's another research overview of a literary paper, specifically the kind of paper we're writing. There's a research paper step-by-step guide, and that's by WikiHow. There's another step-by-step guide, because sometimes we learn differently. There's a works cited page formatting link, and then a sample for you to see what the sample looks like. But we're going to have one in our thing, but so you have this as a resource, right? So I talked about this introduction here, and basically it's one of this is what I just reviewed with everyone, but it's like it's writing a research paper is one of the aspects of academia. It's like being a student, right? Being in the academy, which all of you are in right now by being college students. And it's something that all of you will do in this class and all of you will do in classes to come. So it's basically understanding the skill, right? So this is, like I said, there's few individuals for whom this process comes naturally, right? But but everyone can do it. I've done it. I've written them. Some of you have done it in this class. And by the end of this, and in a couple of weeks, all of you would have done one. So you will say, check that off. Next time someone asks if you've written a research paper and they ask for a show of hands, all of your hands will go up as well. So here's a element of what a research paper does, right? I say it combines research, that means you have to seek information, critical thinking, right? For you to think about deeply about what it is you're exploring. Source evaluation, that means that, that's an important part of life in general, that you understand the source and evaluate the source. Like, where's this information coming from, right? How can I trust it? Like this information that I'm going to put in a paper and pass on to others is correct information, right? Has been evaluated, has been vetted by someone that I can trust to say this is good information for me to put in my paper and pass on. The organization of how the information is organized in composition, right? On how you work with your grammar, how you work with all the elements that we have been working up until this point. So I feel a research paper combines all of those things. I repeat: research, critical thinking, source evaluation, organization, and composition. Student in. All right, so the research paper has primary sources and secondary sources, right? So a primary source provides direct firsthand evidence about an event, object, person, or work, right? If you're doing a work of art. So primary sources include historical and legal documents, eyewitness accounts, results of experiments, statistical data, pieces of creative writing, audio and video recordings, speeches, art objects, interviews, surveys, field work, all that are primary sources. So in the natural and social sciences, primary sources are also could be empirical studies, research where an experiment has been performed and a direct observation was made. That's a primary, right? Results of empirical studies are typically found in scholarly articles, etc. All right, we're not doing a social studies necessarily or a scientific one, but a primary source is the poem that you're going to be examining, or the poems that you'll be examining, or a primary source would be the pieces of fiction that you will be examining, right? Those are examples. Examples of a secondary source, right, are sources that discuss, interpret, comment upon, analyze, evaluate, and process primary sources, right? So articles that talk about the short story, essays that discuss the poem, so things like that. A news article, a newspaper article that is talking about it. So it's about talking about the primary source. That's considered a secondary source. So basically, you're going to be navigating both these sources. Your primary sources will be the short stories or the poems, and the secondary stories will be articles that you're going to be integrating, and in one case, finding to support the position that I'm going to give you. So getting started, usually if you were starting your own, I always say start with something you like. So if there's a story that you've liked, or an issue, or that you like reading about, like an example would be like fidelity and honesty in relationships, right? And let's say that's an issue that is in both the Buddha principle, Alma, and in forgiveness. So then you would look at those stories and say, I like those stories, I like that issue, I want to look at those things, right? That's something, starting with something you like. And then it says turn interest into interesting. So then looking at it from different angles, like I'm talking about, like what I like about this piece, what appeals to me, what are some ideas inside of it, right? And topics that are good ones, right? Discussion of a work's characters. Are they realistic, symbolic, historically based? Comparison and contrast of the choices different authors or characters make in a work. A reading of a work based on the outside philosophical perspective, right? How Freudian sees Hamlet, how maybe an advised person or relationship sees relationships, right? And compare it to them, compare it to the stories. An analysis of specific image occurring in several works, right? So these are just different, these bullet points give you ideas or topics and how to look at them. For our assignment, you're going to be given a choice of, you're going to given two choices and you will select one. So, the thesis statement. This thesis statement in a research paper works exactly the way a thesis statement works in your poetry essay. So I'm going to come to the room for a moment. So in a thesis statement in your poetry essay, let's say if you were discussing, symbolism in 3 poems, you would say, I'm discussing symbolism in 3 poems. If you're a research paper in your fiction, you might say, I'm going to do a character analysis of the mother, the daughter, mother, Maggie, and D in the short story, everyday use. So then your body paragraphs would explore the mother, would explore D, would explore Mary, right? So the thesis statement works the same way. I'll give you an example of one thesis statement that you're going to have, right? Let me actually just read it so you can hear it. Glasses for a second. Oh. So a thesis statement for one of your assignments is going to read this. It's going to, right? The research question, right? It's going to say, using Diaz's short stories. Okay, this is talks about the short story. The fiction one is going to be on Junot Diaz, right? So I give you all a quote. The Dominican American writer Junot Diaz has often been criticized for his portrayal of women. In an article in the magazine The Atlantic, writer Joe Fazla asked, how can a book's portrayal of women be praised and criticized at the same time? Junot Diaz himself, he said that male writers in general suck at writing three-dimensional, fully developed female characters. And here's the thesis. Here's the question, the prompt. Using Diaz's short stories, Alma and the Pura Principle, write a research paper exploring the question, is Junot Diaz fair or unfair in his portrayal of women in his stories? Right, so that's the question. Let me come back to the class. Right, so now you know your research question. So you'll craft your thesis. So for that thesis, for that story, you're going to take a position, right? You're going to say, I think the way he shows women is fair, right? And you're going to find the support to do it besides your own brain. You're going to find text. With the assignment, now, so I'll get deeper into the assignment. Or you're going to take a position, I think he's unfair. And it's not just your feelings, right? You're going to do research to find that out. Okay, I see a hand. Mabel?
Yes. I was wondering, so it's an argument, right? An argument paper.
Yes.
Okay, so would you like for us to, or now would you like, but should we be including the opposition argument, right? And exploring that, like, like a counterclaim?
That is a tactic of constructing an argumentative paper that you could present the other sides and then counter it, right?
So do you want that to be included since this is like focusing on research, or since we're
Yeah.
proving our own opinion, should we add that in there?
So it's going to be research based, but Mabel, I'm using this example just so that we can talk about the concept of a thesis statement. I'm going to go specifically give you more information on the assignment. If any of you are interested and you want to look ahead, you could take a look. I mean, the assignments are up. They're both, this one that's on fiction and the other one that's on poetry, it's in there. But I'm going to explain a little more because it's not necessarily The research part is important. It's not the heaviest part for it. But right now, so I'm going to stick with your question, Mabel, that um, so then you would construct it, you would have to take a position. And then your thesis statement is going to either say something about, yes, according to the research I've done, I feel his portrayal of women is fair, or you're going to take a position that is unfair. So that will be like the meat, right, or the root of your thesis statement. So I'm going to share my screen again so that we can go back to the handout. Right, here I am. So the research paper will have a thesis statement, right? How long does it need to be? Same thing, 1 or 2 sentences at the most, right? It says it right at the top. This is not the thesis statement. The research paper topics are designed not to be very complicated. So you would only need a 1 or 2 thesis sentence, 1 or 2 line thesis statement. So conducting research and finding sources. So there's going to be you're going to do research. There's 2 ways, right? Mainly the internet, right, is one way you will be able to do research. And the library as well is another place for you to do research. Now, in years past, we did a library workshop, but this time I'm going to do the library workshop with you all on Wednesday. So on Wednesday, we're going to spend some time. I'm going to show you where to look for information, how to get information. Some of you may know this already, and I hope you do. That'll be great. And it will be like a refresher. And if many of you don't know it, then you would be you'll have a better idea of where to get information, because we all use Google, right? And we all go to the internet or Yahoo or one of these other search engines to look for information, and that is valid. But there's also, remember, one of the things that I said, the elements of a research paper was evaluating the source to make sure that the information is trustworthy. So sometimes what you find on the internet through Google or through some of these other search engines, you can't really rely on it completely. Like even Wikipedia, anybody can edit it. So you, on some level, you trust it, but on the other level, on the other hand, you have to be able to figure out how to evaluate its validity, like how valid it is. So we'll do some research in the library through the library's website, which has been set up and improved at OSOS to really help with research. So so the last 2 pieces are creating an outline, drafting, and editing. So you would create an outline. So and it's hard to create an outline until you begin till you take a position and you begin doing some of the research. And then the outline could be, if you say, yes, I agree that his portrayal of women is fair for this reason, and this reason. And those reasons you will discover not only in the work, in the primary sources, but you will discover in the secondary sources when you're looking at the articles. And then, I suggest drafting and then editing. I know that most of us work up until the deadline and we submit it the day it's due or right before it's due. And many of us work that way. I know I worked that way when I was a student. But if you can create the space and time to try to do a draft earlier and then read it through and edit, that would be ideal, to be able to draft and edit. I will say also that part of the reason why I moved the research paper up early in the semester is because it's worth 20% of the grade. And so I wanted to be able to, for you to have a good amount of time to be able to do a revision. So if you needed to do a revision of it, that there was enough time before the end of the semester for you to revise it, and you're not revising it while we're trying to do finals and other papers and all that other kind of stuff. So that was part of my reasoning for moving this up. So I'm going to move on to the next section. This is the overview. The next section is specifically on MLA in text citation. And so MLA, Modern Language Association, we'll be using that term MLA a lot in this class with the formatting. Excuse me. And now with the MLA in text citation. So one quick way to look at this, I'm going to use this example, make this a little bigger, right, is in terms of a newspaper article or novel, I mean, or a short story, etc. Um, here, it's an example of this first line, right? It says human beings have been described by Kenneth Burke as symbol using animals, right? So this quotation is followed by parentheses in the number 3, right? Because we know the source that the book came from says Burke, and this is the page number, right? And the page number is used in fiction. The line number is used in poetry, right? So in this one, the author is mentioned, so this is only the line number or the article, the author of the article. Here, it's a phrase. These are, of course, standalone, right? Human beings have been described as symbol using animals. And here, there's no way to tell that it's coming from Burke. So here we have to put Burke and the page number 3. So even though these are the same or similar sentences, this one the author's already named, this one they are not. And so that's the difference between why only putting the page number when we know the author is concluded in the context or the information in the sentence. And then with the second line, they're not. So we include the author and the line, right? And then, so let me just stop there, right? So that's one example if we know the author. So the idea is, if you could understand the idea of MLX in text citation, is that you just have to, let me come back to the class 1 second. So the idea of MLA in text citation is that here's a quote, right? I want to tell you where it came from. Now, if you're writing a story, right? If you're writing a research paper, right? And let's say you're just writing a research paper on Junot Diaz using the Fourier principle, which is not the case for ours, because in ours you have to use at least 2 of his stories. But if you were just focusing on one story, and in the introduction, you talk about, I'm only going to be talking about Junot Diaz's, you just say it, right? You could, all you need to do every time you do a quote from that story is put the page number, because the reader understands that every quote that you're using comes from that same story. So you don't have to write Diaz 2, Diaz 8 every time you use a different page, right? Because we all know that it's Diaz. But if we didn't know that it was Diaz, or if it was a quote that was from some other source, then you would have to be able to let us know that it's a different source, right? So it might say, in the article in The Atlantic, Joe Fazla says that Junot Diaz cannot write good women characters, right? That's the quote. Then you would have to put the parentheses and the page number, right? Because we know it's coming from a different source. Or if we just said in the article that in The Atlantic, does Junot Diaz write that? He cannot write characters. We didn't mention the author, so then we'd have to put the author's name and the numbers, right? So really, it's just in terms of clarity, to make sure, if you can think of clarity, that the reader always understands when you're quoting where the quote came from, right? Now, in a story like a paper like you'll do with 2 Junot Diaz stories, right? If it's not clear in the context of the sentence or the paragraph that it's from Alma or the Pura principle, and you use a quote that's standing alone, you'd have to say which story it came from, right? Because we understand that we're talking about Junot Diaz, so you'd have to say Alma and the page number, or the Pura principle and the page number, right? So sometimes it can get confusing. You're like, is it the author's name? Is it the name of the story? Is it, what do I put in there, right? It depends on the context of the paragraph and the sentence. So in the example, now I'll go back to the example. The difference here, right, is that the author was named, and so that's why it doesn't have it. But in this case, the author is not named, and so we have to include the author's name in the citation. So the term in text means that this citation is in the text, right? It's not like a little asterisk and leading you to another page to look for where this quote came from. This citation that you're doing, the citing of the work, is in the text. Okay, and so I'm gonna, hopefully this works, click. I'm clicking into a site, the Purdue Lab, that shows us what this whole in-text citation rule. Parenthetical citation, the terms, is just that they're in parentheses. That's why they're parenthetical citations. They're inside of the parentheses. And this gives us different examples for the same, like on the handout. Wordsworth stated that romantic poetry was marked by spontaneous overflow of powerful feelings. And then, since we know it's Wordsworth, right, that's there's just the page number. Here, the same thing, romantic poetry is characterized by spontaneous overflow of powerful feelings. So there, we don't know where that came from, but we know now it's Wordsworth and it's page 263, right? Or if we're paraphrasing the whole thing, we could do that. You still have to give credit because it's not your idea saying that that the spontaneous overflow of powers, that poetry has a spontaneous overflow of powerful feelings. It's Wordsworth's idea, and Wordsworth is proving it, is espousing it, right? It's asserting it. So so this is the book it comes from, right? This particular one comes from William Wordsworth's Lyrical Ballets, Oxford University Press, 1967, right? So this is the information that leads you to the book, right? And this is the where it's coming. This is the how it's used in the essay. So this information will go onto your works cited page, right? So and here's the example that's in the text, right? And so we have that. And then this is the full thing. Kenneth Burke, Language as Symbolic Action, Essays on Life, Literature, and Method, University of California Press, 1966. So this is where this comes from. So these go onto your works cited page. So this shows you different types of ways to cite just about anything. If you have the author's name, if there's no author and there's only a title, if there's a website, this gives you all of the rules, right? So you don't have to memorize them, right? I'm coming back into the class. So you don't have to memorize the rules of what to use if you're using poetry, if you're using this, if it's a single source, if it's multiple sources, if you know the name of the author, you don't know, if it's a website, if it's a blog. You don't have to memorize it, but you have to know where to get the information. So that's what the links at the beginning of the handout and this part and the links that are throughout the handout are doing. They're guiding you and leading you to where you can get the information to structure your MLA in-text citations. Okay, I'm going to share my screen again because go through some more information on the. So this is essentially that. And then formatting your works cited page. This is the next page, the new thing. So I remember there was two things that the research paper has that your essays don't have. One is the citation, which I just described, the MLA in-text citation. And then the second thing is this thing called the works cited page. And so here's a list of guidelines for doing the works cited page. Oops, made it too small. Go, right? So I'm going to scroll down to the image first, right? Because remember I said it's a separate page, even wherever your essay ends, your research paper ends, then the next page will be your works cited page. After your conclusion, the next page, separate page, you don't continue it. Even if there's space at the bottom of that page, you don't continue it on that page. You start a fresh page, you put works cited right at the top, and then you begin listing the sources, any of the articles, any of the things that you use, right? I'm going to scroll up to the top. So you start a new page for your works cited. That's the first, the first instruction. So if your paper is 5 pages long, so your works cited page lists on page 6. Center the words works cited at the top of the page. You see it right here? You center the words, bullet points number 2. Number 3, you double space the list. The whole list is double spaced. All the text that you put in there is double spaced, just like the rest of your paper, double spaced. That's the third instruction. Fourth instruction, do not add spaces between each work that you list. So this is an example of 3 different works. If you notice, it's just the same double spacing from one work to the next. There's not an extra space inside of this, in between code, Lorena code, which is the next one, the second entry. There is not a extra space. This is the regular double spacing, right? Number 5, start the first line of each citation on the left margin, indent each subsequent line 5 spaces, also known as a hanging indent. All right, that was a lot of words, but this is what it looks like. This is the reverse, right? When you normally do a paragraph, the first line is indented and all of the other lines after a paragraph follow, right? They stay on the left margin. With the works cited page is the reverse. The first page stays on the left margin and all the sentences for that particular entry are indented. And so in a way, visually on the page, you could see where each entry, Holly Boya, or Boya, comma, Holly is the first one, code, comma, Lorena is the second one, Eminem slash artist and Rihanna featured artist are the third one. So the formatting is the first line to the left margin, and then the lines beneath it get indented, right? And that is called a hanging indent. That's the name of this formatting of this paragraph of this section is a hanging indent. That the indentation is hanging off after the first line. So put your list in alphabetical order. When you list all of your sources on your page, there should be in alphabetical order. So if you notice, this one begins with the letter B, her last name. This one, her last name begins with C, and this one E. They are in alphabetical order. 7, for the author or the first author of the work, give the last name followed by a comma, then the first name followed by a period, right? So here there's only one name, right? Last name followed by a comma, first name followed by a period. That one, there's more going on, right? But here there's 2 authors. And when there's 2 authors, the rules are a little different. Same thing, last name followed by a comma, first name, but instead of a period, because there's another author, there's a comma, and then the second author gets and their name with the first name, last name. Don't ask me why. That is the rule of MLA in text citation. That's why you just have to be able to follow the rules. And here there's only, this artist only has one name, right? Comma, artist, and Rihanna, comma, featured artist, because they have a distinction, a title in this song, Love the Way You Lie, Recovery Aftermath Records, right? Number 8 is italicize the titles of full works, also referred to as containers. So books, magazines, newspapers, audiovisual material, etc. They get the titles of the books, the title of the magazine, the title of the journal, title of the newspapers, like the New York Times, right? The Daily News, right? El Diario, the New York Post. All of those are the names of the newspapers. The actual articles inside get quotation marks, right? So the short story, Alma, gets the quotes around it, but Alma came from the New Yorker. So the New Yorker magazine will be italicized, and the article of it would be, excuse me, the article will be in quotes, and the name of the journal will be italicized. An example is here. We look at the second one with Lorena, and I'll make it bigger. I'll slide it up. Oops. And make Lorena's bigger, okay? Here, Lorena Code, right? So the quotation, the name of the article is Finding My Voice, a hip hop music curriculum for students of diverse backgrounds, right? So this got quotes. And then this is the Illinois Music Educator. That's where it comes from, right? That's the name of the journal here. So the name of the journal is italicized, and the name of the article that is inside of the journal gets quotation marks. Okay, this is formatting the works cited page. Let me make it smaller so that see it. So these give you the rules. Again, this is part of the thing that's just following rules. Now, one other thing I'll say about this is that this idea of last name, first name, then the article, then the article, then the book it comes from, volume, number, spring, all that kind of stuff. Here's a book, right? These different website attachments. right? I'm going to scroll to the top of this. This is going to give me a minute because it's going to do that. And again, there is a link in the site that helps us to, you don't have to memorize the formatting, you just have to know where to find the formatting and be able to get the correct information. And as soon as that little wheel stops spinning, I will hopefully be able to get to the top and show you. But it's still frozen. It's going to give me drama. I'm letting it find its way. So I'll go back to it in a moment. So essentially two things, right? With the new pieces. One is the MLA and text citation, one is the works cited page. And those two things are less about creativity and more about following rules, right? Being able to put the parentheses, use the right punctuation, make sure it's the line number. If it's a poem, it's the page number, right? And then constructing the works cited page, separate page, title goes in the middle, it just says works cited. You list your works, you have the hanging indentation, and they're listed in the right order, right? With this author's name and the other elements that need to go with it. The author's name, the title of the article, the title of the book, and if it's like the university, the title of the press, if it's just the book, and the year. I think that's the latest MLA requirement for it. And the little circle is still turning. Okay. Yeah, we'll review this second section again. I'm just what I want to do is in the handout is show you an example of a research paper. As soon as this cooperates with me. And if you can imagine, if you can tell, this heavy lecturing, giving instruction information is a thing that I don't like most to do because there's, very little opportunity for lots of interaction, stuff like that. But, just trying to cram the information so that at least we have it. And then we can start talking about the assignments and seeing how this looks on a more practical or in practice way, like how you put all this theory and instructions and handouts and actually create a paper, like put it into practice. So let me check that PDF one more time. It's just strange. I'm not understanding why it's doing that thing. It's still doing that thing. Let me try to close it. Closed it. All right, let me go into thing of fresh document. Yeah, this is drama. Okay. All right. Well, it's giving me drama. I'm going to pause. Any questions so far? I mean, I know I've thrown a lot at you, and I think I had asked you to read the first 3 pages, so maybe so it wouldn't be so fresh and new when you walked into the classroom. But um, any thoughts or questions so far?
I think, I guess my question is if we give you like an outline would you be able to give feedback, or do you think that's like too pressed
No,
for
I mean,
time?
no. We're actually, the research paper is not going to be due until let me give you the date. I think I mentioned it, not till the 21st, right? So I'm going to give you I'm giving you this overview today. I do want to do, I do want to spend time um, doing some library work. So between next class and the 15th. So by the 15th, you will have, I think I want to also give you, I want to do the assignments on Wednesday, because today it's almost 6:30, so I don't want to cram the assignment in there today. But I will point you to the assignment so you can take a look at it. What I want to do today is, yes, here we go. All right. Okay, yes, Adama.
Hi, Professor. I'm a little bit confused about the worksheet page,
Mhm.
the one you show us, the
Yes.
third source. They add the name and they
Mhm.
put artist, and the second name and feature artist. Why is
Yeah.
that? You have to put the name and the first name and the last name and the first name.
Yes. So the it says artist because it's the it's a song, right? So it's a little different, right? And the songs, usually you have to put the song maker. This is what I'm saying. I'm going to show you a site so that you can understand, like, what information do I need to include for the different sources? Like, if it's an article, what do I need to include? If it's a song, what do I need to include? If it's a newspaper article, what do I need to include? If it's and that is just what you need to include on the works cited page. That's what I mean by that. So it can be confusing, Adama, um, because it's not intuitive. Like, we don't know, like, I mean, unless people do, you're writing works cited pages like every week, then you kind of learn it more and do it more by almost organically. But otherwise, we have to look it up. We have to look up how to format each individual source. So I
Okay.
want what I okay. So what I want to do is show you kind of an example of a paper, and again, for us to be able to look at the elements of it. Okay. So share my screen. And I'm back to this. So this is an example of what a paper would look like, right? And if you look at yes, if you look at the different elements, right? Um, Here, right, the student, right, Aaliyah Gonzalez, right, is their name is this wouldn't be on yours, but their name is here, the professor's name, English 305, and the date, right? So all this is the same. Their last name with the page number, right? That will be on every page. That's still the same. There's a title, right, for the person's paper, which is, which yours would have. And then here's the introduction. It's a little longer, right? This whole thing is the introduction, but you can see the introduction has a thesis statement. So again, I'm gonna read in a minute, right? But I just want you to see the elements, right? The first page, what the first page looks like. And it looks like the first page of an essay, right? Of the essays you're writing. The formatting, the title, right? The introductory paragraph, the introduction with the thesis statement in it, and then the body begins, right? So this paper is a little longer. If you notice page 2, right? It's all a little longer. This page, I know it's about 8 pages, this student's paper, right? So 5, 6, 7, 8. Here we go. And then toward the end, the last paragraph in the whole thing is the conclusion, right? Which we see here. And then after the conclusion, the paper ends there. Here's the works cited page, right? So separate page altogether is works cited. And then you see these are all the works that they used inside of their paper, right? Here's a list of all of their works, and you see they're in alphabetical order, right? A, B, D, H, H. This is not a typo. This particular author always spells her name with lowercase all the way to the last one, which is Whitman, right? this is an example of what the works cited page would look like, right? And if we look at it, if we look at the individual pieces, individual works, let's look at this first one, right? They've included the last name, first name of the author, right? The title.
Thank you.
Okay. I just muted because it sounded like somebody was communicating. Greg, we could hear you. If that was you, but whoever it was. But if you were trying to talk, you can certainly unmute yourself again, and then I'll be quiet and listen. But getting back to the first entry here, it's done in a particular order: the last name, first name, the author's name, the title. Look, I know this is an article or from an essay or from a journal or for something, only because I could tell the title is in quotation marks, right? And then this is the title of the journal, white out the continuing significance of racism. Then in this case, it has the editors listed, it has the press, and it has the year, and then it has the page numbers from which the entry comes from. And that we follow this one, similar thing, the journal I could tell because, or an article, because this first part's in quotations, this part here is italicized, so that's the thing or the magazine it comes from. And then this has to deal with what's required when you're doing work cited for a magazine. So I'm gonna rewind in a minute to show you the site where you can find all that information, but I want you to be able to see what the paper at the end will look like. Yours will not be this long. Your research paper could be anywhere from 4 to 6 pages, I believe. And that's not including the works cited page. And then so that the works cited page would be a separate page. This is kind of what it looks like, right? It's an essay, it's just with the same components of thesis, introduction, etc. But it's longer and it's taking a position on something with one. The other one is a little different. So I want to read the thesis statement for this paper, right? And it says, in considering Toni Morrison's short story, Recitative, along with Langston Hughes' poem, I Too, I demonstrate that both texts illustrate how strategies of divisiveness and ignorance function as tools of white supremacy in the proliferation and maintenance of institutional racism. Says a lot, right? But let's begin at the top. In considering Toni Morrison's short story, Recitative, and alongside Langston Hughes' poem, I Too. So this literary paper, even if I were reading it for the first time, I know the student is going to be comparing 2 literary works, one by Toni Morrison, a short story, and a poem by Langston Hughes. And then the student's going to show us, demonstrate that both of these texts illustrate how strategies of divisiveness, like strategies to divide people in ignorance, right, function are tools that white supremacy in tools of white supremacy in the proliferation and maintenance of institutional racism. That basically how white supremacy uses divisiveness and ignorance to continue pushing forward and maintaining institutional racism, right? And it's not this general statement that this person believes in general. The person believes this because they're getting this information. Is showing how this poem and this short story is proliferating that, is showing that. And then what they do is then they do research, right? They try to find articles to support this position. So what I want to show here, and the next thing in terms of structure, is that here is the first in-text citation, right? And so she writes from the poets. Okay, so she starts, although both tests irrefutably establish an existence of racial differences in spite of there being a construct, the stark racial difference identification in Hughes's I Too deeply contrasts the ambivalence of racial identity of Morrison's Recitative. So she's talking about how the poem is different from this. And she talks about from the poetic speaker's initial declaration of racial identity, right? So we know which poem she's talking about because she only mentioned Langston Hughes' poem, 1, the identity, I am the darker brother. So Hughes's poem invites a more explicit and condemning discussion around the complexities, right? So she gets here, she needs to credit the idea So she puts from line 2 because she's from a poem, right? At the end of it. In this era, people, she goes on again, and, you know, and in poem, you write the word line and two. So the first time. So then if you look throughout the paper, you'll see different moments of different kind of citations related to either a page number or line number. And in it, there is some indication either beforehand, and when there isn't, like here she is going to make an assertion. She's going to write, by removing racial specificity and installing ambiguous racial markers and recitative, she's talking about Morrison, develops a narrative in which racial difference is not the main component producing in the plot. She instead centralizes the consequences of systemic and influencing the plot and character development in this short story. So this doesn't come from, we only know this because of looking at the paper. This information here about Morrison and the racial difference comes from this article by Schumann and Warhol, and it's on page 1012. So if I see Schumann and Warhol, right, that means that there should be on the works cited page some text by Schumann and Warhol. And Schumann is the first one, and here it is, right? Here's that text that was used in that one section exists here. So that if I need to check it, I'm going to go to this book or this article. I'm going to look it up, and on page, whatever page it said, 1027, I'm going to find that information, right? If I was vetting and checking it. So I just wanted you to be able to see how the MLX in-text citation looks inside of the text. Now, with the time remaining, I want to just go to that place, and then I'm going to pause because I want to leave a few minutes just for any questions or thought. But, one second. Okay. Bear with me one more moment. So I'm sharing my screen. So in the text that I was showing you where it showed Wordsworth, when you click that, and the other example from here, if you continue to scroll down, it's going to start telling you the different ways to cite works by multiple authors, you know, citing works by the same author, citing the Bible, citing indirect sources, citing transcript plays or screenplays, citing non-print sources like how to do webs, electronic sources here, right? Multiple citations, etc. If the links don't work and you're like, wait a minute, you could always go to you can always go to Google and do how to cite a newspaper article. Click it, and you'll probably get. I should have put MLA or something like that, but since I do it so much here, so here, there's different places where you know how see the format, right? So the format of a newspaper article, the author's last name, first name, title of the article, subtitle of any, name of the newspaper, right? Date of the publication, key and the page number if given, name of the database, and the permalink or the URL. So it gives you an example of what information to include, and then how to lay it out. Now I know I'm going to stop sharing. That once we do the library workshop, I'm going to go over this again. So if some of this is the end of class and you're like, what the heck? What order? Just relax a minute. On Wednesday we'll pick it up. But I know that sometimes when we go into the library website, you'll see that sometimes you'll pick an article and it'll give you the citation, already. And so you just need to copy and paste it. But it's important for you to be able to know where to get the information, how to organize it, right? Last author, last name, first name, title of the book, university press, the year, those kinds of things for you to know it. So if you have to construct from scratch, you know where to go to find that information. So I'm going to pause because there's 3 minutes left, and I see Erica's child is crawling on her. Has joined the classroom, but yeah, it's a lot of information. I'm just going to say what we're going to take away from today is that we're going to do a research paper. We're going to explore, at least with the Juno Diaz, who has one. The other story we'll talk about deals with erotic poetry, and we've read enough erotic poetry in this class, and I give you other examples that so there'll be an element of research. One will be a choice will be a fiction or nonfiction. The difference, right, that the research paper contains elements of an essay, like same structure, intro, body, and conclusion. The introduction is a thesis. The big difference is that the research paper will have MLA in text citation. So you'll be citing those quotes that you were quoting where I didn't have you cite. This time I'm going to have you cite them. And there'll be a works cited page that needs to be constructed. So in the simplest sense, that's the summary that I want you to take away with today. And if you could digest that, that's good. And we'll keep building. We'll go over what I went today in terms of the specifics of MLA and text citation and the specifics of the works cited page. So we'll have those specifics to continue diving into. So I don't want you to feel too overwhelmed by all the information, but you have it now, and we'll be building on it. And once we put it, hopefully the visual example in the packet helps you see what the paper will look like. And as we look at the questions and begin to construct you select which one you want to do, hopefully it'll start gelling a little better in your brain. Okay, I'm going to pause, see if there's any questions. Okay. No, very informative. Okay. All right, then. There's no.
Professor.
Yes.
You said we have to turn the assignment through Turnitin or whatever.
Yes, for the poetry. For the fiction essay, the next one.
But it's like by reading the stuff, it's like too confused for me.
Yeah, well, whatever we're doing today, this is not due until the 21st. Okay,
yeah.
so that's not due to November 21st. But Wednesday is just the fiction essay. So I want to ask you, so when you say confusing, what are you referring to?
Like the agreement, all the stuff that was
that I was going over today?
No. How are we going to turn the assignments?
Okay, so So did you see me do the share screen at the beginning of the class? I'll do
No,
it. No, let me do
like
it again.
when we finish, you say we had to send the assignment to you through Turnitin or something, not the
Correct.
class.
Right.
Mhm.
Yes. So I've just shared my screen. So when you finish writing your fiction essay, you're going to come to course content,
Mhm.
right? I'm in there. You see this blue thing here? I'll move
Yeah.
to the top. That's turn it in. So you're going to click that, right? And when you click it, it's going to open up and it's going to submit, turn it in assignment. So that's going to be your fiction essay. You're going to come here. You're going to look for your name. There you go, right? You're going to
Yeah.
click it. I'm not going to click it now because I'm not. But if for some reason your name is not there, you can type it in, right? Your first name, your last name, and then you're going to write fiction essay here. And then you come here, it says choose from this computer. It's going to ask you to upload it. So wherever so you can only be as a Word or a PDF document, right? So then once you do that, then and then you hit upload, and then it's going to give you, after it uploads it, it'll give you a confirmation. So this is where you do it. So you go to course content again. I'll show you all. You come to course content, right? It's going to be this little blue with the red. It looks different from all the other ones, right? You're going to click you complete to put it in there. And then you'll see this thing. You'll look for your name, right? You find your name. If it's April, if it's Nidia, if it's Rehan, right? You click it, and then you cite, fiction essay, and then you select your essay. You hit choose from this computer, and it'll, you'll find it and you'll put it in.
Okay.
And then you hit upload. Okay.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions?
So that one is due on Wednesday.
Yes, the fiction essays due Wednesday by midnight, the end of the end of the day.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions from anyone else?
No, everything was honestly very straightforward.
Okay. Very cool. Then have a great night. It's a little beyond our time. Have a good night and good evening, and I'll see everybody on Wednesday.
Okay. Thank
Good night,
you.
everyone.
Take care.
Bye. Good night.
All right. Good night, Professor.
Good night, Professor. Thank you.
You're welcome, Thelma.
Good night, everyone. Sorry, Professor. I was on the bus. I just got home.
Okay.
So
Well, I'm glad you're home and you're safe.
yeah, and I was listening to everything you were saying. I'm glad I actually read that whole
handout?
document.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Good.
I understood, what you were talking about. So that's good.
You could follow. Excellent. All right.
All right.
Gregory. Have a good
All
night.
right. All right. Good night.
Good night, Professor.
Good night, Johnny. Take care.